You have slain a dormant beast, the Mountain King's larva.
Sonny fell breathlessly to his knees. His whole body felt as though it just went through a meat grinder. Even large amounts of adrenaline could not wash away all the pain and exhaustion. And yet, he was exhilarated. The satisfaction of killing the larva was so vast that he even forgot to be disappointed about not receiving a memory, the special item tied to a Dream Realm inhabitant's essence, which was sometimes awarded by the spell to the triumphant awakened. A magic sword or a suit of armor would have come in handy right about now. He would even settle for a warm coat. 3 seconds. You can rest for 3 more seconds, Sonny thought. The nightmare was far from over. A few moments later, he forced himself to come back to his senses and looked around, trying to assess his situation. The larva was dead, which was great. However, he was still tied to it by the damn chain. The shifty slave and the scholar, both pale as death, were busy untangling it to buy the 3 of them at least some freedom of movement. Further away, torn bodies and pieces of flesh were lying on the ground. Many slaves were killed. The lucky few who had somehow managed to escape were now running away.
Fools. They're dooming themselves.
The chain jerked towards where they ran, but then suddenly went slack. A burst of hope filled Sonny's chest, but it was quickly dashed when he realized he was still attached to the scholar and the shifty slave. At some point, the chain must have broken in 2. If their shackles had a less sophisticated locking mechanism, he would have tried to pick the lock and free himself. Unfortunately, each pair was fixed to a specific link. Without unlocking them, no one was going anywhere. The tyrant, Mountain King, was hidden from sight by the bright glow of the bonfire. Sonny could feel his movements, however, due to the subtle tremors spreading through the stones. Screams of the slaves who were yet to perish filled the night. The soldiers, who were still alive, bellowed out, desperately trying to fight off the monstrosity. What pulled Sonny's attention the most, however, was the fact that several of the maimed bodies were starting to move. More larvae? His eyes widened. One after another, 4 more corpses slowly rose to their feet. Each beast looked as disgusting as the first had, and not a bit less deadly. The nearest was mere feet away from Sonny. Damn it all! He thought. Then, weakly, I want to wake up. A strange clicking filled the air. One of the beasts turned its head towards Sonny's group of slaves and gnashed its fangs. The shifty slave fell on his ass, whispering a prayer, while the scholar just froze in place. Sonny's eyes darted to the ground, trying to find something to use as a weapon, but there was nothing there. But he wasn't about to give up. Full of vitriol, he simply wrapped a length of chain around his knuckles and raised his fists. Come at me, you bastard! The larva dashed forward with incredible speed, in a flurry of claws, fangs, and terror. Sonny had less than a second to react. Before he could do anything, a nimble figure moved past him, and a sharp sword flashed in the air. The monster, beheaded with one strike, fell gracelessly to the ground. Sonny blinked. What was that? Dumbfounded, he slowly turned his head and looked to his left. Standing there, with a valorous expression, was the handsome young soldier who had offered him water. He looked calm and collected, if a little grim. There was not a speck of dirt or blood on his leather armor. That was incredible, Sonny thought before catching himself. I mean, that was all right, I guess. With a short nod, the soldier moved forward to face the remaining 3 larvae. But after taking a few steps, he suddenly turned around and gave Sonny a long look. Then, With one swift motion, the young warrior took something from his belt and threw it to Sonny.
Save yourself.
With that, he was gone to fight the monsters. Sonny reflexively caught the item and watched the soldier go. Then he lowered his gaze and studied the thing clutched tightly in his hand. It was a short and narrow iron rod with a straight bend on its end.
Is it a key?
His heart began to beat faster.
It's the key to the shackles. It has to be.
With one last glance at the fierce battle starting between the young soldier and the larvae, Sonny dropped to one knee and began twisting his shackles, maneuvering them into a position he could work with. It took him a few tries to understand how the unfamiliar lock worked, but then, finally, there was a satisfying click, and he was suddenly free. The cold wind caressed his bloodied wrists. Sonny rubbed them and smiled with a dark gleam in his eyes. For a moment, visions of violence and revenge filled his head.
Boy, over here!
The shifty slave was waving his hands in the air, trying to get his attention. Sonny briefly considered leaving him to die, but then decided against it. There was strength in numbers. He hurried over to the other two slaves and quickly unlocked their shackles. As soon as the shifty slave was free, he pushed Sonny away and did a little dance, laughing like a maniac.
Ha! Free at last! Gods must be smiling upon us.
The scholar was more reserved. He squeezed Sonny's shoulder in gratitude and smiled weakly, casting a tense look in the direction of the ensuing fight. 2 of the 3 larvae were already dead. The third one was missing an arm, but still trying to tear its opponent apart. The young soldier danced around it, moving with the grace of a natural-born warrior.
What are you waiting for? Run!
The shifty slave made a move to run away, but was stopped by the scholar.
Benny, my friend, I would...
If you say advise again, Fraser, I swear to the gods I will bash your head open.
The 2 slaves looked at each other with open animosity. A moment later, Fraser lowered his eyes and sighed.
If we run away now, we will surely die.
Why?
The older slave simply pointed at the tall bonfire.
Because without that fire, we will freeze to death before the night is over. Until the sun rises, running away is suicide.
Sonny did not say anything, knowing that Fraser was right. He realized it right after strangling the larva. No matter how terrible Mountain King was, the bonfire was still their only lifeline in this frozen hell. It was as what the broad-shouldered slave, may he rest in peace, had said. There was no need for anyone to kill them. The mountain itself would do it.
So what? I would rather freeze to death than be eaten by that monster. Or, turn into one of those things.
Benny was pretending to be brave, but there was no conviction in his voice. He glanced at the darkness surrounding the stone platform and shivered before taking a small step back. At this point, the third larva was long dead, and the young soldier was nowhere to be seen. He had probably gone to join the fight at the other side of the bonfire, leaving the 3 slaves alone at the mountainside part of the stone platform.
The monster might be sated with those it had already slain. It might be defeated or driven away by the Imperials. If we stay here, we have a chance to survive, however small. But if we run away, our doom will be certain.
So what do we do?
Unlike Fraser, Sonny was sure that the Mountain King would not be satisfied until all of the trespassers to its lands were dead. What chance did a bunch of mortals have to defeat such a tyrant? Even if they were not normal people but awakened, a fight with a tyrant was not something one could easily survive, let alone win. But if they wanted to live, they had to get rid of that thing somehow.
Let's go take a look.
Benny looked at him as though seeing a lunatic.
Are you insane? You want to get closer to that beast?
As if on cue, the great beast roared in the distance. Sonny shrugged.
We have to do something. I'd rather die fighting. Come on.
Sonny turned and strode off toward the rampaging monster. Sonny was off to face a nightmare creature. And not any creature, but one of the highest categories of terrifying creatures that existed within the nightmare realm. A dreaded, fearsome tyrant. The odds of survival were so low that anyone would have laughed in his face if he were to ever suggest attempting to fight it. Only an awakened that was at least 2 or 3 ranks above the creature would have stood a chance. Sonny certainly wasn't one of those. And yet, he had to deal with this Mountain King somehow to avoid an even more miserable death. The ridiculous degree to which the odds were stacked against him from the very beginning of this delayed execution had gotten old a long time ago. He didn't have the energy to even bother thinking about it. What was there to fear anyway? He was already as good as dead, so why worry about it? On the other side of the bonfire, things were turning from bad to worse. Most of the slaves were already dead. A few soldiers were still desperately trying to fight the monster, but it was clear that they weren't going to last long. Right in front of Sonny's eyes, the tyrant picked up a dead slave, dragging the chain up with him, and opened its terrifying maw wide. With one crushing bite, the slave's body was torn in half, leaving only bloodied stumps inside the shackles. The Mountain King's 5 indifferent milky eyes stared into the distance as it chewed, streams of blood flowing down its chin. Seeing that the creature's upper arms were busy, one of the soldiers screamed and lunged forward, brandishing his long spear. Without turning its head, the tyrant extended one of its shorter lower arms, catching the soldier's head in an iron grip. It squeezed, crushing the poor man's skull like a grape. A moment later, the headless body was tossed over the cliff, disappearing into the abyss below. Benny doubled over, vomiting violently into the snow. Then he shakily rose to his feet and glared at Sonny.
Well, we've had a look. Now what?
Sonny did not answer, pensively observing the tyrant with his head slightly tilted to one side. Benny turned to Fraser.
I'm telling you, old man, the boy is sick in the head. How the hell can he be so calm?
Shh! Lower your voice, fool.
Blood drained from Benny's face as he clapped his hands over his mouth. Then he cast a fearful look in the direction of the tyrant. Luckily, the abomination was too busy feasting on the slaves, the lucky ones who were already dead, and the unlucky ones who were still alive, to pay them any attention. Benny slowly exhaled. Sonny was preoccupied with thinking, measuring his chances of survival. How do I get rid of that thing? He didn't have any special powers, nor did he have an army ready to bury the tyrant under a mountain of bodies. He didn't even have a weapon to at least scratch the damn bastard. Sonny moved his gaze and looked past the creature into the endless darkness of the moonless sky. Suddenly, a bright flash streaked in the air and collided with one of the tyrant's arms. The collision burst and sparks rained down onto the mountainside. The young soldier, Sonny's heroic liberator, had just tossed a burning piece of wood at the monster and was now defiantly raising his sword.
Face me, devil!
A distraction. Perfect. Sonny knew there was no way he could kill the Mountain King with his own 2 hands. He decided to enlist some help. A human wouldn't be up to the task, but a force of nature on the other hand. Since I can't do the bastard in myself, let's make gravity do it for me. He was in the middle of thinking over the details of the plan when the young hero's foolish bravado presented an opportunity. Now, everything depended on how long the pompous idiot would manage to stay alive.
Come with me,
Sonny said as he started running toward the far end of the stone platform, where the heavy wagon was perched dangerously close to the edge of the cliff. Benny and Fraser shared a hesitating look, but followed him anyway. Benny muttered under his breath,
Is this calm confidence or madness?
Fraser shook his head.
Who knows, but it is often the mad who are favored by the gods.
Behind them, The young heroic soldier nimbly ducked under the tyrant's claws, slashing it with his sword. The sharp edge slid ineffectively across the dirty fur, not leaving even a scratch on the creature's flesh. In a flash, the tyrant moved with frightening speed, throwing all four of its hands in the direction of its new, irritating foe. Meanwhile, Sonny ran with all his speed towards the wagon. Once he reached it, he hurriedly looked around, checking if there were any larvae close by. Once he was sure he was in the clear, he pushed the wagon, trying to move its rear wheels. The wagon was left at the upper end of the stone platform, where it narrowed and turned back into the road. It was turned sideways to block the wind, with its front facing the mountain wall and its back facing the cliff. There were two large wooden wedges placed under the rear wheels to prevent the wagon from rolling backward. Sonny turned to his companions and pointed at the wedges.
When I tell you, remove both of them, then push. Understand? What? Why?
Benny stared at him with a dumbfounded expression on his face. Fraser just looked at the wedges and then at the tyrant. The young soldier was miraculously still alive. He was weaving between the creature's limbs, always just half a second away from being completely eviscerated. From time to time, his sword flashed in the air, but to no avail. The Mountain King's fur was too thick, and his skin too tough to be harmed by mundane weapons. There was a hint of apprehension on the young warrior's face. All the other soldiers, as far as Sonny could see, were already dead. Sonny needed that soldier to live a little bit longer.
Don't die yet,
he thought. To Benny, he simply said,
"Just do it. Trust me."
The next moment, Sonny was running again, trying to follow the chain from the brace where it was fixed to the wagon. The thing he was searching for was hard to notice due to all the bodies, blood, and viscera littering the stone platform. But for once, luck was on his side. A short amount of time later, he had found what he needed, the torn end of the chain. Finding the nearest set of shackles, complete with a horribly disfigured body of a slave locked in them, Sonny plopped down on his knees and scrambled to unlock them. With a sideways glance, Sonny noticed the brave young soldier flying through the air, finally caught by one of the tyrant's strikes. Incredibly, the young soldier managed to land on his feet, sliding several feet across the stones. All of his limbs were still in place. There were no terrible wounds on his body either. Without skipping a beat, the soldier rolled forward, picking up his sword from where it fell on the ground, and then rolled once more, this time sideways, narrowly avoiding a heavy stomp from the creature's foot. With a resounding click, Sonny finally managed to unlock the shackles, shaking the dead slave out of them. He promptly locked them once again, this time around the chain itself, ending up with a makeshift slipknot and loop. Now, everything depended on his resolve, hand-eye coordination, and luck. Turning to Benny and Fraser, who were still waiting by the wagon, he screamed,
"Now!"
Then, picking up a sizable length of chain, Sonny stood up and faced the tyrant. The young soldier spared him half a glance. His eyes lingered on the chain for a moment, and then quickly followed it to the wagon. Without showing a hint of emotion, the young warrior doubled his efforts, drawing the creature's attention away from Sonny. Sonny focused on the weight of the chain in his hands, the distance between him and the tyrant, and his target. Time seemed to slow.
"Please, don't miss."
Gathering all of his strength, Sonny spun and threw the chain in the air. Like a fisherman casting his net, the loop opened as it flew, closing in on the position of the fight between the young soldier and the tyrant. Sonny just needed the loop to land on the ground, close enough to them that once one of the tyrant's feet landed in the trap, he could pull on the chain and tighten it around the monster's ankle. In the last moment, the Mountain King suddenly flinched back, and instead of falling on the ground, the chain loop landed perfectly around its neck. A second later, it tightened, acting as an iron noose. Sonny froze for a moment. He couldn't believe his eyes. He clenched his jaw and balled his fists at his side. He held himself back from triumphantly shaking them in the air,
Yes!
He screamed inwardly. Moments later, the wagon rolled off the cliff, pulling the tyrant down with it. Sonny looked back to make sure, but what he saw drained the blood from his face. Benny and Fraser had managed to remove the wedges from under the wagon's wheels and were now desperately pushing it to the edge of the road. However, the wagon was rolling slowly, very slowly, much slower than Sonny had anticipated. He turned to the tyrant, panicking. The creature, surprised by the sudden weight pressing down on its neck, was already raising its hands to tear the chain apart. Sonny's eyes widened. In the next second, the young knight crashed into one of the tyrant's legs, throwing it off balance and buying them some more time. Sonny was already running to the wagon, cursing loudly in his mind. Reaching it, he threw all of his weight into the damp wood alongside Benny and Fraser. He pushed with all the strength left in his rather small, terribly beaten, and enormously exhausted body.
Roll, you creaky piece of shit!
The wagon sped up a little, but was still too slow. It needed more momentum to reach the cliff's edge. Sonny turned and saw something that sent a ripple of dread across his body. The tyrant had finally managed to get a hold of the chain tied around its neck, trying to free itself.
Roll, you creaky piece of shit!
Sonny pressed himself against the wagon, pushing with all he had. The 4 powerful oxen that used to pull it were now dead, and instead of them, 3 tired slaves were trying to do the job. Even with the slope of the road helping them, the speed of the wagon was agonizingly slow. The tyrant, unfortunately, was moving much faster. Pushing the young soldier back with a deadly swipe of its lower arms, the Mountain King raised its lower arms to its neck, trying to grab hold of the chained noose around its neck. The Mountain King's fearsome physique seemed to be turning into a disadvantage. Its long, terrifying bone claws were perfect for tearing flesh apart, but they weren't the best tool for precise movements. It took the tyrant some time to finally get a hold of the chain without slicing its neck open. Right as the beast got a grip on the chain, the wagon finally started to approach the edge of the cliff.
Come on, just a little bit more!
The wagon's rear wheels finally slid from the road, hanging over the dark, seemingly bottomless pit beneath. The creature felt a tug on the chain and turned, staring expressionlessly at the 3 slaves with its 5 milky, dead eyes. The wagon tipped, half of the wood disappearing towards the abyss below. The quick motion threw Benny and Fraser off their feet. Then, the wagon froze, balanced precariously on its middle axis. Sonny was the only one left standing. He cast a last glance at the towering monster, and then slammed his shoulder into the front of the wagon. The wagon finally lost its balance and rolled over the edge, scraping its undersides deafeningly against the jagged rocks. Sonny fell forward, landing on his knees, narrowly saving himself from tumbling down the cliff with it. Turning his head to the tyrant, he gave it a wicked smile. The Mountain King made a move to lunge at the scrawny slave, but it was already too late. A moment later, the chain on his neck drew tight, and he was yanked back with tremendous force, flying over the edge of the cliff like a rag doll. The creature fell into the darkness silently, as though refusing to believe that it had been defeated by a tiny human.
Die, you giant bastard,
Sonny thought. Then he took one deep, ragged breath and dropped to the ground, utterly exhausted.
Is this it? Did I pass the trial?
He rested on the cold stones, staring at the night sky, and waited for that faintly familiar but elusive voice to announce his victory. But instead, wave after wave of pain that he had earlier chosen to ignore finally started to catch up with his abused body.
Ugh.
His whole body ached, His joints flared with pain, the skin on his back slashed by a slaver's whip and pierced by the bone spikes of a newborn larva, burned in agony. He started to shiver, once again consumed by the dreadful cold. I guess not. His thoughts were slow and muddy. What else am I supposed to do? A dark figure appeared above him. It was the young soldier. He looked as calm and handsome as ever. Dirt and scratches decorated his armor from his valiant battle, but otherwise, the young soldier appeared to be fine. He extended one arm to Sonny.
You can't rest here. You'll freeze to death.
Sonny sighed, accepting that his first nightmare was not over. Then he clenched his teeth and slowly rose to his feet, ignoring the soldier's helping hand. Around them, there was a sense of utter carnage. Except for the 3 slaves and the heroic soldier, every member of the caravan was dead. Their bodies littered the ground. They were horribly maimed, and some were torn into pieces. Here and there, a repulsive carcass of a larva could be seen. Shadows cast by the bonfire danced happily across the stone platform, seemingly unperturbed by this morbid view. Sonny was already numb to the gruesome carnage, or was simply too tired to react. Benny and Fraser were already up, looking at the soldier with weary apprehension. With or without shackles, they were still slaves, and he was still a slave driver. Noticing their tense gazes, the soldier sighed.
Come closer to the fire, all of you. We need to warm ourselves and discuss what to do next.
Without waiting for their response, the soldier turned around and walked away. After hesitating for a few moments, the slaves followed. A bit of time later, the 4 of them were seated around the bonfire, soaking up pleasant heat. Benny and Fraser were close to each other, maintaining a safe distance from the soldier. Sonny sat apart from everyone, not because he had a specific reason to distrust one more than the others, but simply because he didn't know how to interact with people in general. Growing up, Sonny was always a misfit. It's not that he had never tried to become close with someone. It's just that he seemed to lack the ability. It was as if there was an invisible wall between him and the rest of the world. If he had to put it in words, Sonny would say that he was born without a small but important gear in his brain that everyone else seemed to possess. As a result, he was often baffled and stumped by human behavior, and his attempts to imitate it, however diligent, inevitably fell flat. This strangeness made others uncomfortable. He has always been a bit different, and if there was one thing people hated, it was those different from them. Over time, Sonny simply learned to avoid getting too close to anyone and settled comfortably into his outcast role. This habit served him well, since it not only made him self-reliant, but also saved him from being stabbed in the back by shady characters on multiple occasions. That's why he was not thrilled to share the rest of this nightmare with 3 strangers. Instead of trying to start a conversation, Sonny sat quietly by himself, lost in thoughts. After a few minutes, the soldier's voice finally broke the silence.
My name's Gregor.
Sonny looked up and across the fire at him. Benny scoffed.
Oh, so we're on a first-name basis now. Or were you planning to still just refer to us as slaves?
Gregor ignored Benny's words.
Once the sun rises, we will gather whatever food and water we can find and go back down the mountain.
Benny gave him a defiant look.
Why should we go back? To be put in chains again?
The young soldier sighed.
We can go our separate ways once we leave the mountain. But until then, I'm still responsible for your lives. We can't continue up the road since the way over the mountain pass is long and arduous. Without the supplies that were stored on the wagon, your chances of making it are not high. That's why going back is our best hope.
Fraser opened his mouth, planning to say something, but then thought better of it. and remained silent. Benny cursed, but was seemingly convinced by Gregor's rational words.
We can't go down.
Benny barked a laugh and glanced at the soldier.
Don't listen to him, your lordship. This boy is, touched by the gods. He's crazy, is what I'm trying to say.
Gregor frowned, looking at the slaves. The two of you are only alive thanks to this child's bravery. Aren't you ashamed to badmouth him so? Benny shrugged, showing that he wasn't ashamed in the least. The young soldier shook his head. I, for one, would like to hear his reasoning. Tell me, why can't we go down? Sonny shifted, uncomfortable in the center of everyone's attention.
Because the monster isn't dead. Because the monster isn't dead.
These ominous words hung in the silence. 3 pairs of eyes widened, staring right at Sonny. Why do you say that? After thinking about it, Sonny came to the conclusion that the tyrant was, indeed, still alive. His reasoning was pretty straightforward. He did not hear the spell congratulating him on slaying the creature after it fell off the cliff, which meant that it was not slain. But he couldn't explain that to his companions. He pointed up.
The monster jumped from an incredible height to land on this platform. Yet it wasn't harmed at all. Why would it be killed by falling off the cliff?
Neither Gregor nor the slaves could find a flaw in this argument. Sonny continued.
Which means that it's still alive, somewhere down the mountain. So by going back, we will be delivering ourselves into its maw.
Benny cursed loudly and crawled closer to the bonfire, staring into the darkness with terror in his eyes. Fraser rubbed his temples, mumbling, Of course. Why didn't I realize myself? Gregor was the most stoic of the 3. After thinking it over, he nodded. Then we go up and over the mountain pass. But that's not all. He glanced in the direction where the tyrant had fallen. If the monster is still alive, there is a high possibility that it will return here and then pursue us, which means that time is of the essence. We will need to move as soon as the sun rises. He gestured to the torn bodies littering the platform. We can't allow ourselves to rest the whole night anymore. We need to gather supplies now. If there was a chance, I would have liked to give these people at least a humble burial after gathering all that we can from them. But alas, fate has decided otherwise. Gregor rose to his feet and brandished a sharp knife. Benny tensed up and watched the blade carefully, but then relaxed, seeing that the young soldier showed no sign of aggression. Food, water, warm clothes, firewood. That is what we need to find. Let us split up and accomplish one task each. He then pointed at himself with the tip of the knife. I will carve the oxen carcasses to get us some meat. Fraser looked around the stone platform, most of it drowning in deep shadows, and grimaced. I'll look for firewood. Benny also glanced left and right with a strange gleam in his eyes.
Then I'll go find us something warm to wear.
Sonny was the last one left. Gregor gave him a long look. Most of our water was stored on the wagon, but each of my fallen brothers was carrying a flagon. Gather as many as you can find. Sometime later, far enough from the bonfire to be hidden in the shadows, Sonny looked for dead soldiers, with 6 flagons already weighing him down. Shivering in the cold, he finally stumbled on the last broken body clad in leather armor. A cry of pain broke through the silence of the night. The old veteran, the one who had whipped him for trying to accept Gregor's flask, was badly injured and dying, but miraculously, still clinging to life. Horrible wounds were covering his chest and stomach. His time was running out. Sonny knelt beside the dying soldier and looked him over, searching for the man's flagon. What irony, he thought. The old man chuckled, a strange, strained laugh that brought up blood with it. The older man tried to focus his eyes on Sonny and weakly moved his hand, reaching for something. Sonny looked down and noticed a shattered sword laying on the ground not far from them. Curious, he picked it up.
Are you looking for this?
The dying soldier didn't answer, watching the young slave with some unknown intense emotion in his eyes. Sonny sighed.
It's the least I can do.
With that, he leaned forward and slit the old man's throat with the sharp edge of his broken blade, then threw it away. The soldier twitched, drowning in his own blood. The expression in his eyes changed. Was it gratitude or hatred? Sonny did not know. Illusion or not, it was his first time killing a human. Sonny expected to feel guilt or fear, but actually there was nothing at all. It seemed that, for better or worse, his cruel upbringing in the real world had prepared him for this moment well. He sat quietly near the old man, keeping him company on his last journey. After a while, the spell's voice came whispering into his ear.
You have slain a dormant human, name unknown.
Sonny flinched.
Oh, right. Killing people is also an achievement as far as the spell is concerned. They don't usually show this in the webtoons and dramas.
He registered that fact and put it away, but as it turned out, the spell wasn't done speaking.
You have received a memory.
Sonny froze, opening his eyes wide.
I hope it's something useful.
Memories could be anything, from weapons to enchanted items. One received from a dormant rank enemy wouldn't be too powerful, but it was still a boon, weightless and undetectable, able to be summoned from nothingness with a simple thought. A memory was incredibly useful. What's more, unlike corporeal things, he would be able to bring it back with him to the real world. The advantage of having something like that back in the outskirts was hard to overestimate.
A weapon, a sword, anything.
Memory received. Silver bell.
Sonny sighed, disappointed.
Well, with my luck, what was I expecting?
Still, this thing was worth investigating. Maybe it had a powerful enchantment like being able to send out destructive sonic waves or repel incoming projectiles. Sonny summoned the runes and concentrated on the words, Silver Bell. Immediately, an image of a small bell appeared in front of his eyes, with a short string of text below. Silver Bell, a small memento of a long-lost home, which once brought its owner comfort and joy. Its clear ringing can be heard from miles away.
Shit.
Sonny thought, dejected. His first memory turned out to be pretty much useless, like everything else he possessed. He was almost starting to see a theme in how the spell was treating him. Sonny dismissed the runes and then got busy removing the dead man's fur cloak and warm, sturdy leather boots. As an officer, the quality of these clothes was a notch above those of simple soldiers. After putting them on, Sonny finally felt warm for the first time since the nightmare began, not considering the short time he had spent near the bonfire.
At least I won't die from exposure now,
he thought. The cloak was a bit bloodied, but then again, so was Sonny. He looked around, easily piercing the veil of darkness with his tenebrious eyes. Gregor and Fraser were still in the middle of their tasks. Benny was supposed to be looking for winter clothes, but was greedily pulling rings off the dead men's fingers instead. Unseen to them, Sonny hesitated, considering if he had really thought things through well enough. His companions were unreliable. The future was too uncertain. Even the requirements of passing the nightmare remained a mystery. Any decision he could make would have been a gamble at best. Still, he had to make some if he wanted to survive. Not wasting any more time thinking, Sonny returned to help the team scavenge with a deep sigh. They spent the rest of the night sitting with their backs against the bonfire, staring fearfully into the night. Despite the exhaustion, no one could sleep. The possibility of the tyrant coming back to finish the 4 survivors off was too frightening. Only Gregor seemed to be fine, calmly sharpening his sword in the bright light of the dancing flames. The sound of the wet stone scraping against the blade was somehow comforting. At the break of dawn, when the sun had lazily begun to warm up the air, they loaded themselves with all the supplies they'd managed to gather and set out into the cold. Sonny looked back, taking in the sight of the stone platform for the last time. He managed to get past the place where the slave caravan was supposed to perish. What other horrors were in store for him before he could finally wake up? If he ever would wake up.